Hi, and welcome to the Show Some Skin monologue writing tutorial. My name is Lucas Garcia, and I will be leading this online workshop. Just a little bit about myself before we start. I graduated in 2015 from Notre Dame with a degree in English and Theater. I completed a senior thesis project in creative writing, and I have been a part of Show Some Skin since its first show in 2012. The Show Some Skin team has asked me to record this video so that they can put it online for anyone looking for some help writing a monologue. Now, I do have a lot of material, so I will be reading from my notes, which I apologize for. Anyway, let's get started. The first thing you should know about writing a monologue for Show Some Skin is that you don't have to be a quote-unquote writer in order to write a monologue. If you have a story that you want to share, Show Some Skin wants to hear it. I've divided the rest of the workshop into 5 parts: pre-write, entering the monologue, writing the monologue, revision, and submission. Let's get started with pre-write. There are a couple of things that you can do before you even start writing to make your process go smoothly. First, find a place to write in, somewhere that's free of distraction, somewhere you work well, and most importantly, somewhere you feel comfortable. Writing a monologue can be an intense emotional experience, and finding a place where you feel safe to relive memories that may be painful or to experience any emotions that surface during your process will help you make the most of your writing time. Second, writing can be a significant time commitment, so designating a specific time and place to write can help streamline your process and prevent you from being distracted. Thirdly, writing is also a physical experience. One way of getting into a headspace where you can write is engaging the body in your process. Try a few breathing techniques, do some jumping jacks, stretch your arms and legs and back. Try to center yourself in your body so that you can focus on your work. This next part is called entering the monologue. Finding a way to get those first words onto paper can be the most challenging part of writing, so these are a few strategies to help you work through that first step. The prompt is a great place to start. Each year, the Show Some Skin committee chooses a theme and constructs a set of prompts to address this theme. Reread the prompt. See if it stirs anything in your memory. Find out what resonates with you the most. Answer some of the questions that the committee asks. It's a great way of accumulating material for your monologue. Once you have a story in your mind, you can start to build your monologue. I'm going to share one way of entering an unwritten monologue, but there is no one way to do it. Ultimately, do what works for you. There are 3 phases or doors in this method that lead you to your monologue. The first door is memory. Think back to that time your story took place. What was happening? Who was there? What time of day was it? Was there a song playing? Details will help give the world of your monologue texture and will give the audience concrete sensations and objects to latch onto. Details will make your monologue vivid and accessible and will give anyone listening to your monologue a place to focus their experience of your voice. That being said, make your details count. Make meaningful choices about them. Ask yourself, does this detail enhance or distract from the thrust or main point of my monologue? The second door is emotion. How did you feel during, before, and after the event you are remembering? Why did you feel that way? Was your reaction prolonged? Was it delayed? How do you feel about it now? Has it changed, and why? Emotions provide the Emotions provide the foundation for the attitude or tone of your piece. They also provide the scaffolding for building the meaning of your piece. The third door is meaning. Meaning is the meat of your monologue, and discovering what your experience means, what you mean in your recounting of it, and how you mean it is the key to finding the thrust or main point of your monologue. Synthesize what happened, how you responded to it, how it made you feel, and what it means in a larger context. One way to think about meaning is by thinking about the moment in question as the center of a set of concentric circles. At the center is you and your experience, and each circle away from the center is a step towards a larger significance. How did your personal internal reaction or experience affect the room that you were in, the people you were with? How did it affect your relationship with the school you attend, the geographic location where you're at? How does your experience relate to your socioeconomic status, your racial identity, your sexual and gender identity? What happens when that relationship encounters societal expectations? That's one way to think about meaning. Now, a quick note about showing versus telling. In other forms of writing, it's important to maintain a balance between showing and telling. Keep in mind that your monologue may potentially be performed. This adds another dimension to the experience of your story and in some capacity does some of the work of showing. Vibrant details will result in a more detailed monologue, However, the balance between showing and telling is not as critical to this particular creative form. For instance, the text of Athlete, performed by Rachel Ganson in 2015, is a telling rather than a showing piece. The performance itself does the showing. On the other hand, the text of Haircut, performed by Simone West in 2015, does a lot of showing on its own. That translated to a minimal performance. Moving on, the next part is about the logistics of writing. Here are a few writing strategies. Be intentional about when you choose to write and how long you spend writing. Pay attention to what your body is telling you so that you can optimize the time you spend sitting down. It may be a cliche, but dictionaries and the thesaurus are also tools you can use to diversify your word choices and give your monologue nuance. This next part is about what to do if or when you hit a writer's block. First, breathe. Second, take a break. Drink some water, eat a snack, sleep, listen to music, see other humans, sketch out what you feel like you want to say, and then come back to it. The important thing to remember about hitting a block is that the solution is to do anything else other than writing. Give yourself some time to think it over, and then come back to it. Next, we'll talk about structure. What I mean by structure is the form of your monologue. Is it one uninterrupted speech? Is it separated into sections by time or event? If you've written dramatic material before, does it include stage directions? In any case, the selection committee doesn't prefer one structure over another. However, if ambiguity, confusion, or lack of clarity is a part of your monologue, be sure to be intentional about it. Make choices about what's being submerged or dissolved. If your monologue is skirting around something or is intentionally withholding something, don't sacrifice the underlying clarity to do so. If you're comfortable sharing your monologue, ask someone whether it makes sense or not. Lastly, consider the tone of your piece. The tone is the attitude you have towards the content. The language you use is the most indicative of tone, but tone is also more of a composite picture of the piece as a whole, built up throughout the monologue. Let's move on to revision. The most basic question to ask yourself when entering into the revision stage is this: is the piece saying what I want it to, how I want it to? If you have the time, let your piece sit for a bit before you start revising. Don't start right away. Give yourself a chance to see the piece with fresh eyes. Also, try not to revise while you're writing. Let your thoughts flow and trim what you don't want as part of a separate process. Let yourself step back so that you can see the piece as a whole from a greater vantage point. Now, the producer and the director are responsible for editing pieces that are too long for the show, as well as editing for clarity of content. If you are submitting a monologue, we would prefer for you to make any cuts that might be needed. That way, any changes come from you, and not from us. This is your voice, and we want to ensure that once the monologue enters our hands, that we preserve the tone, the style, and the meaning of the piece. We have a suggested word count, which helps us with that. However, you can choose to adhere to that or not. But be aware that we may cut parts of the monologue in the interest of maintaining the length of the show. It's important to note that we include both versions of the monologue in the archive, so ultimately your words are preserved. But if we cut a piece for performance, it will not look the same on stage as it sounded when you wrote it. Let's move on to our last step, submission. Ultimately, you don't have to submit what you wrote. If it was enough to write it down, to go through the journey of putting it on paper, that's a part of Show Some Skin's mission, because it means that you're thinking critically about your experience here. If you want to see it performed, if you want other people to hear it, if you feel like it has to be heard, if it would help you to see it performed, then submit. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact the Show Some Skin board on their Facebook page or on their website, ndshowsomeskin.com.